If you have a piece of clay at home, what you're going to be doing is just really kind of warming up with your clay by getting your hands around the clay and really, really kind of exercising those fingers to get ready for your sculpture. So you're going to be just massaging that clay in your hand to begin with and really exercising those muscles. So this is your warm up. So if you went and made Play-Doh, you can warm up with this. If not, that's okay. You don't have to, you can skip through this part of the warm up. Anyways, we're just going to be massaging through. You can mold your animal or human and try to practice with that of like how that will be, the proportion and everything, how that's going to look. So you can start to understand maybe what you're going to be shaping. So clay sometimes can be a little easier to mold versus the paper form that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to put my clay aside now and get started on our next steps, which is using newspaper and tape. So in class, we reviewed the idea of an armature and how that is the support of your project. In class, we will be using wire, but at home, you will just be using newspaper and tape. And you don't have the wire, that is fine, because what you're doing is you're just going to be taking paper and you're going to be scrunching that paper to create the form. So like maybe this is my head and I get myself a good head, like really wrap it down. And why we practice with clay, because I really wanted you to understand, like think of when you're getting the paper going, you think of it like the clay. Use that same feeling of really scrunching that paper up. And then you're going to start to tape that form. So I can add some tape. So I like that as my head. I'm going to start to add my tape on there, and then I'm going to keep going by adding more pieces to this. So maybe now I go for the arms for this guy, or actually I'm going to get another big bulky piece for the stomach first. So I'm going to make this one. Get another big, so you can get all these different shaped balls, and you can always add bulk around this, right? So if you feel like you got it going, starting smaller is always better, and then bulking up later. So I can go ahead and just add my head / neck in there, because it's kind of narrow here, wide up here for my head. So I feel good there. Let's add some, we'll add some arms. And now if you're doing the wire, you're just putting this right around that form of the wire. So again, you can see it's not really that important because we're building small. The only reason I'm using wire is just to get the experience in. So it's not a necessity for you full distance learners. So you can see I'll just tape. And I can really start to form my head. So whether it's wire or not, you can see, you can kind of get the same form. So I'm going to continue with no wire, just because that's most likely what you guys will be working on. Okay, so I'm just creating this kind of form for my arms, and then I'll be able to attach it. If I decide like that's going to be weird, that big bump, and I want to attach them separate, I can always cut my paper. Like that's no big deal to just give it a cut and then attach them separately on here. Now the tough thing about without that form in there, you can't really bend this guy like you could with the wire. So if there was wire in here, you might be able to bend that shape. So you really want to make sure that you're bending elbows and doing that while you're working, so that you make sure that that's what you're wanting, right? So kind of ran out of paper. So I might need like to add a little hand in here. And where you start to add tape in these things, that could be a joint too. So maybe I want my arm to start to bend this way, so I can start to use that as separate pieces of paper to get those joints correct. So play around with it, build small so that if you do feel like it didn't turn out really exactly the way you wanted it, you can redo it. It's not a huge undertaking. We're not looking for this huge defining sculpture. So make sure that you feel, don't go huge, because then sometimes it's hard to go back and make changes if it's too big. So you can see I got my little turn. So I'm trying to do that turn with the elbow, and then I'm going to have my little hand coming up here. So I'm going to try to really get that bent. So this is the place that you really want to do the fine tuning and get it just as you would want it before you start adding the final layers. So go ahead and start working on yours. I'll go fast through this video to show how I'm going to build it. And then we'll get started on the paper mache part. All right, so you can see I have gotten my sculpture together. I want to be able to get paper mache so that I design my legs so that they really look separate here, right? So I want to make sure that I don't tape too much. So I'm just taping it on the bottom so that those legs hold. And I just kind of taped my little arms together there so they hold too. So I'm just putting a little tape around the back side so it doesn't ruin that separation that I want here, right? So you can see I really worked to mold my little figure as best as I could. Obviously, we're all going to do our best, so individuality. And you can look at the proportion too, and you can say like, hey, did I make that proportion accurate? And you want to question that through the process too. But you can see like I even got my hips in the back, right? So really trying to get that proportion. Now, there are some students that were working and their head was proportionally out of character. So you can make the decision to start again, take your head off and do it the way you want it. Or you can decide something like, no, maybe I'm going to make this a character, like, something that's a little bit not realistic. And I'm going to make it like an anime character instead that has a bigger head and big eyes. So you get to make those decisions as an artist. Really trying to understand proportion is great, because then once you know that the proportion length and kind of the accuracy, then you can start breaking those rules or consciously know that you broke those rules, right? Okay, pause your video here and finish your sculpture. The next part is if you finish the first part early, or you can do this next class. So finish up your base. All right, so now we're going to get started on the paper mache part. So this is just your armature that you built, whether you had wire in here or like I just showed you without wire. Whatever you're going to do, you want to put a piece of newspaper down for this part, because you don't want to get your glue stuff all over the place, right? You want to keep your surface nice and clean. And you're going to take a little tiny container. I have this little throw out one. And you're going to add some white glue in there. So the reason why you're going to have a container to add the glue is because you're going to do a little bit of glue at a time. So because you don't need to mix a ton at once. So you're going to do a ratio of about 3 parts glue to 1 part water. So you're just going to kind of guess what that looks like. And what it looks like when you start to mix it with your paintbrush is so when the glue comes right out of the bottle, it's pretty stiff. And what you want more of this liquid like glue here. So you want it to be more of almost like a smoothie texture there. So like that. So you don't want it as thick straight out of the bottle. So you just want to add a little bit of water so that it's really easy to brush on. So there's a few ways to do this. You can start by brushing the glue right onto your character and then adding the strips in. Or you can brush the strips, or if you have a big enough container, you can dip the strips. But you're just going to start putting these all around your character. So you can see I need to add a little more glue here and here. And you'll most likely get glue on your hands, so you just have to, because it's best to start to mold. So you will get pretty sticky here, so if you do need to take a break, make sure to wash your hands. But you're just going to start wrapping these around your character. So you could brush the glue right onto your strips, and sometimes that makes it easier. So the reason why you have all these different sizes is so that you can really get around those little edges and corners. Using your brush or your fingers, I always find my fingers work better than a brush to just start molding that together. You want a good 2 layers of the glue and newspaper. So really kind of wrap it quite a lot there. So oh no, my head fell off. Can I get it back on? I might need to pause and get some tape in there. Oh, it's going to stay on. Okay, so if something like that, a joint is always going to be your delicate spots like that. So the way to do this one is get your strip, get a nice long strip. I'm going to brush it down here. And what you want to do is going around, but what you want to do is something like going under another spot. So not just around in a circle, but try to find a spot to brace that. So it's almost like a zigzag. See how I'm moving that across up and then coming to the back and down around that shoulder again. And then this one comes up around this way. So sometimes having a brace like that will help those joints if you're starting to have some trouble there. You can see too, my newspaper starting to come off up here because I didn't use enough glue. So just make sure that you're brushing those parts down so it's nice and smooth, that you don't have any newspaper sticking out. Okay. Sometimes the glue ratio can get a little tough because it gets stuck on you. So just have some patience with it. I can also go in and dip into my solution and glue that on too. So it gets a little sticky. Just take your time with it. If you find it's too sticky, maybe you could just add a tad bit more water to your solution. If that might be why it's getting too sticky. So you can add a little more glue there. So you're just going to continue wrapping and getting at least 1 full layer. 2 is going to make your character nice and stiff. So go ahead and get that on your entire guy. So remember, the joints are really important to get that wrapping correctly. Don't just wrap one around. You want to kind of find another spot to really get that. So if I go under the armpit, then over the front, and then around here, kind of like a cross. I want to do some more cross style. Okay, so I am finished for now. I feel like I did a lot of gluing and I got a little tired, so I am good, and I'm going to let this dry and come back to it next class. So check where you're at. Make sure you check your timing and where you're at. If you've gotten this far in the video, that means you may want to pause, stop it, and go to your next class. Have a good one. Take care.